All right, so welcome to another deep dive with us. Today, we're going to be looking at Hatsun Agro Product Ltd,
Oh, yeah.
which is a big player in the Indian dairy industry. I think they're one of the biggest.
Yeah, they're definitely a major player.
And you've sent me a bunch of stuff here.
That's right.
I've got their latest financials, board meeting minutes, and even an auditor's report. So we've got a lot to dig into.
Lots to unpack. Should be fun.
So I guess first things first, let's take a look at the financials, right?
Yeah, the numbers.
For the quarter and the 9 months ending December 31st, 2024.
Okay.
And right off the bat, they're boasting a 10.58% EPS growth for those 9 months,
Not bad at all.
which is up from 9.66% the previous year.
Yeah, pretty impressive.
So that looks pretty good on the surface.
Yeah.
But I'm always hesitant to just focus on EPS,
I'm with you there. It's a good starting point, but doesn't tell the whole story.
It's just one number. It's like a little snapshot in time.
Exactly.
Doesn't give you the full picture of what's going on. And what's interesting is that their revenue from operations actually dipped a little this quarter compared to last quarter,
Okay.
even though it's up year over year.
Interesting.
So what's going on there? What do you think?
Yeah, a little bit of a head scratcher, right? It makes you wonder, what are the factors at play here?
Like, is it just a temporary blip or?
Yeah, could be seasonal or something, but it's definitely worth investigating.
Well, they do mention some changes in inventories.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if that's related.
Could be. That's often a sign.
Too much product sitting around, something like that.
Right. Too much inventory can tie up their cash flow.
Oh, yeah, makes sense.
And then they might end up having to sell it at a discount later, which would hurt their profits.
Okay, so we'll have to keep an eye on that, see how that plays out in the coming quarters.
Definitely something to watch.
So, financials, bit of a mixed bag there.
Indeed.
Now let's jump into this board meeting from January 16th, 2025.
All right. Board meeting minutes, always a good read.
There's a lot here.
Yeah, they can be pretty dense, but you often find those little nuggets of gold in there.
So, first off, they approved those unaudited financials, which, I guess that's pretty standard procedure.
Yeah, pretty much a formality.
But then, get this.
Okay.
They appoint Ernst & Young,
Oh, wow.
LRP, as their new internal auditor.
Ernst & Young, one of the big four.
Yeah.
That's a significant move. I wonder what prompted that.
Well, it's got to be a good sign, right? Bringing in someone like that.
It could be a very positive signal, showing investors that they're serious about transparency and good governance.
Right.
But you also have to wonder if there's something else going on behind the scenes.
Ooh, like what?
Like maybe they're trying to address some concerns that have been raised either internally or by regulators.
Interesting. So maybe a little reading between the lines needed on that one.
Always good idea.
But then there's this whole solar energy thing.
Okay. Yeah, that caught my eye too.
Investing in FP Solar Shakti Private Limited for their plant in Andhra Pradesh.
Going green, it's the trend, right?
Seems to be all the rage these days. Is it just good PR, though?
I think it's probably a mix of both. Consumers are definitely more eco-conscious these days. They want to see companies doing their part.
Yeah, makes sense.
But renewable energy can also be a smart business move. It helps manage costs in the long run.
Yeah, it's like an investment in the future.
It is.
And they do highlight that this isn't a related party transaction.
Oh, that's important.
So they're genuinely looking outside for this expertise.
Right. It means there's less chance of any conflicts of interest.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, it's a good sign in terms of their corporate governance.
Speaking of expertise, you mentioned that FP Solar Shakti, this company that they're investing in, saw significant turnover growth in just a year.
They did. Very impressive growth.
But is turnover the same as profit?
That's the question, isn't it?
Like, are they actually making money?
It's possible to have high turnover and still not be profitable.
Oh, right.
So we'd need to dig a little deeper into their financials to really assess that.
Okay, so maybe a little bit of a risk there.
Potentially, yes.
Moving on, they also approved a revised remuneration package for their managing director.
Always a sensitive topic.
Yeah, executive pay, always a hot-button issue.
Right, especially when it comes to shareholder approval.
Well, that's what they're doing. They're actually putting it to a shareholder vote.
Really? That's interesting. How are they doing that?
Through a postal ballot.
Wow, going the extra mile for transparency.
I guess so, yeah. It shows they're taking corporate governance seriously.
Absolutely, and it gives the shareholders a voice on a matter that directly affects them.
Right, it's not just the board making these decisions in a vacuum.
Exactly.
And to make sure everything is above board, they even appointed a scrutinizer for the whole postal ballot process.
A scrutinizer, that's a good step.
They do.
Yeah, transparency points.
So the scrutinizer acts as an independent observer, making sure the voting process is fair and transparent.
Okay, so no funny business going on.
Right. It adds another layer of accountability. And they even set a cutoff date for shareholder participation.
When is that?
January 31st, 2025.
All right, so no last-minute shenanigans.
It's all about clarity, I guess, setting clear expectations.
Exactly. It speaks to a well-managed process.
So, okay, we've got the financials, we've got the board meeting highlights. Now it's time to delve into this auditor's report.
All right, let's see what the auditors have to say.
It's from Deloitte Haskins & Sells LLP.
Another big name, very reputable.
So this gives us a glimpse into their financial reporting practices, right?
Exactly. It's a checkup on their books.
Now, it's important to note that this is an independent auditor's review report.
Right, not a full-blown audit.
So it's not as in-depth.
It's more like a limited review.
Okay, but still important.
Absolutely. It gives us some assurance.
And the good news is
Drumroll, please.
they found no material misstatements.
That's a relief.
So that means that, at least on the surface, Hatsun Agro's financial reporting seems to be in order.
Good news. No red flags there.
But remember, this is just a limited review. It's not a full audit.
That's right. We have to keep that in mind.
So we've got some strong EPS growth, a move towards renewable energy that's raising some questions, and a clean bill of health, at least for now, from the auditors.
Right.
What stands out to you as we kind of wrap up this first part of our look into Hatsun Agro?
I think for me, what's really interesting is that we're seeing this contrast between these seemingly positive financials and then these strategic decisions that, hint at potential challenges.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to balance short-term success with long-term sustainability.
Exactly. It's a tough balancing act for a lot of companies these days.
And you know what? I think that's a great place to pause for now.
Sounds good.
We've covered a lot of ground, and there's still so much more to uncover. We'll be right back with more on Hatsun Agro Product Ltd. after a quick word from our sponsors. All right, so welcome back to our deep dive into Hatsun Agro Product Ltd. Before the break, we were talking about this contrast between their positive financial performance, those pretty good EPS numbers, and some of these strategic decisions, like the solar energy investment. That could be a bit risky.
Yeah, it's a classic dilemma for a lot of companies.
Like they're trying to juggle this short-term success with long-term sustainability.
Exactly. And it's not always easy to find that balance.
So let's dig a little deeper into that.
Okay.
Especially that move towards renewable energy.
The solar power play.
We talked about the turnover growth of FP Solar Shakti, the company they're investing in. But what about their profitability? Are they actually making money?
That's the key question.
Do you have any insights into that?
I wish we did. Unfortunately, we don't have access to their detailed financials at this point. That would definitely be needed to fully assess the risk for Hatsun.
Yeah, makes sense.
But we can look at the bigger picture.
Right.
India's putting a lot of resources into renewable energy. The government is really pushing for solar adoption. So in that sense, Hatsun is kind of riding a favorable wave.
Okay, so even if this particular company, FP Solar Shakti, isn't a home run, the overall trend suggests that this investment isn't completely out there.
It's not a crazy gamble, that's for sure.
Okay, good.
Okay.
But let's go back to Hatsun's financials for a second. We saw that slight dip.
Yeah, the revenue dip.
In revenue from operations this quarter. Could that be a sign of something bigger, in the Indian dairy market as a whole?
It's possible. It could be a sign that the market is becoming more competitive.
Okay.
India's dairy market is huge. It's growing, but there are also a lot of players now, both domestic and international companies. And then you have the rise of these plant-based milk alternatives.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Which could be starting to chip away at traditional dairy sales.
So maybe that's having some impact.
It's hard to say for sure without more data.
And that kind of makes you wonder if Hatsun's focus solely on milk and milk products, if that's a bit too narrow. You know what I mean?
It's a valid point. I mean, specialization can be a strength, but you also need to be able to adapt to changing consumer tastes.
Maybe they need to diversify a bit.
Possibly. We'll have to see what their management says about that in the future.
Okay, now I want to circle back to that board meeting again.
Okay.
They made a point of highlighting that the investment in FP Solar Shakti is specifically not, a related party transaction.
Right. They made that very clear.
Why is that such a big deal?
Well, related party transactions can sometimes raise red flags, in terms of transparency and corporate governance,
Oh.
because it basically means that the company is doing business with someone
Uh-huh.
who's closely connected to them, like a
Right.
director or a major shareholder,
I see.
and that can create potential conflicts of interest
Oh,
or even lead to preferential treatment.
okay.
So by emphasizing that this is not a related party deal,
Mm.
Hatsun is trying to show that they're making decisions
Yeah.
based on what's best for the business, not for personal gain.
Okay, so it's all about demonstrating that they're being ethical and transparent.
Exactly. It's a good sign, especially when you're dealing with a significant investment
Right.
in a relatively new and untested partner like FP Solar Shakti.
And they're also putting the managing director's revised remuneration package to a shareholder vote,
That's right, they are.
which is, not something you see every day.
It's not common, but it's a good sign.
It is, yeah.
They're being accountable to their shareholders.
Instead of just, handing out a big bonus and hoping nobody notices.
Exactly.
And remember, they appointed that independent scrutinizer
Right.
to oversee the whole voting process.
To make sure it's all fair and square.
So we've got this interesting dynamic emerging here. On the one hand, some potentially risky decisions like that solar energy investment and that dip in revenue.
Right.
But on the other hand, these really strong signals of commitment to transparency and ethical practices.
Yeah, it's almost like they're trying to mitigate those risks by being extra open about everything.
It's a smart strategy, I think,
It is. In today's world, trust is everything.
especially for investors.
Absolutely. And showing that commitment to good corporate governance can really help build that trust.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the board meeting, the solar energy investment, but what about the auditor's report?
Right. Let's not forget about that.
What can you tell us about the significance of that no material misstatement finding?
From Deloitte.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely a positive sign. It provides a certain level of assurance
What's
about
that?
their financial reporting practices.
What means their books are basically in order.
It suggests that, at least for now, they're adhering to accounting standards and presenting a fair view of their financial position.
That's reassuring, especially considering, all the different moving parts we've been talking about.
Right. Their operations are quite complex.
Yeah.
But we have to remember that this is just a snapshot.
Okay.
It's important to stay informed, to keep an eye on their performance.
Right. Things can change.
Exactly. The business world is constantly evolving.
So where do we go from here? We've covered a lot of ground.
We have financials, board decisions, sustainability, corporate governance.
The whole shebang.
What's the next layer of the onion that we need to peel back?
What do you think?
Well, for me, what I find really intriguing
Okay.
is this tension, between Hatsun Agro's traditional business model.
Right, the milk and milk products.
Exactly. And then these forays into new areas like renewable energy. Are they really committed to a sustainable future?
Yeah, is it just about, managing risk or appealing to these new consumer trends?
Those are the questions we need to grapple with.
Yeah, are they just riding this sustainability wave, or are they truly changing their business for the long haul?
That's a question worth exploring.
I think so.
And to do that, we need to zoom out a bit.
Okay.
Look at the bigger picture.
What do you mean?
What are the forces shaping the Indian dairy industry as a whole?
Right.
What kind of competition are they facing? How are they positioning themselves within this dynamic landscape?
Those are some big questions.
They are.
But I think we're ready to tackle them.
Let's do it.
We'll be back with more on Hatsun Agro Product Ltd. after a short break. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We've been taking this deep dive into Hatsun Agro Product Ltd. And now I kind of want to zoom out a bit, look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, the macro view.
The Indian dairy industry as a whole. It's a big market, right? It's booming.
It's massive, yeah. The largest milk producer in the world, actually.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yep. And with a growing middle class, increasing urbanization, demand for dairy products is only going to go up.
So that sounds like a good place to be, right?
On the surface, yes.
But you mentioned headwinds earlier. What kind of challenges is the industry facing?
Well, one of the biggest, I think, is climate change.
Okay.
India is already dealing with more frequent droughts, extreme weather.
Yeah, that's true.
Which, can really impact milk production and quality.
Makes sense.
And water scarcity is a major concern as well.
Right. Dairy farming uses a lot of water.
It does.
So it's not just about meeting that growing demand. It's about doing it sustainably.
Exactly.
In a way that doesn't hurt the environment.
Right. It's a tough balancing act.
And then you also have rising costs, right? Feed, transportation.
Yeah, all those input costs are going up.
Plus the competition you mentioned earlier.
Domestic and international players.
And then you throw in the plant-based milk alternatives.
That's adding another layer of complexity.
A lot to juggle.
It is a very dynamic market.
So how is Hatsun, how are they dealing with all of this?
Well, they're making some moves. We've seen that, the solar energy investment. But is it enough? I don't know.
They've got a strong brand, though, right? Loyal customer base.
They do. That's a big advantage.
But they can't just rely on that forever, can they?
Not in this environment. They need to innovate, diversify, maybe even consider acquisitions.
Acquisitions, huh?
Yeah, it could be a way to accelerate their growth.
What kind of companies are we talking about?
Well, it depends on their strategy, right?
Oh,
They could expand their product portfolio, maybe get into value-added dairy products.
oh, interesting.
Or even explore the plant-based market themselves.
That would be a big shift.
It would, but it could be a smart move.
Or they could acquire companies that give them like a stronger foothold in certain regions.
Right, or maybe improve their distribution network.
So it's not just about producing milk anymore. It's about becoming like a food company.
A more diversified, resilient food company.
Able to adapt to like all these changes we've been talking about.
Exactly. They need to be thinking long-term about how to create a sustainable business.
In a world that's, pretty unpredictable.
Right, a world full of volatility and uncertainty.
And it sounds like they are taking some steps in the right direction.
Yeah, they're making an effort.
The renewable energy, the corporate governance stuff, giving shareholders a voice.
Those are all good signs.
But, actions speak louder than words.
Absolutely. The real test is in the execution.
Can they actually turn these initiatives into, tangible results?
That's the key question.
And can they really make sustainability a core part of their business?
It's a journey, not a destination.
Well said. So I think, that's where we leave it for our listeners today.
Yeah, okay.
We've really dug deep into Hatsun Agro, their financials, their strategic decisions, governance, the whole industry landscape.
A lot of moving parts.
We've seen their strengths, but also some potential vulnerabilities.
It's a complex picture.
But that's business, right? There are no easy answers.
That's the reality.
But by, looking at all these different angles, asking the tough questions, hopefully we can gain a better understanding of how companies like Hatsun Agro are navigating this ever-changing world.
That's the goal.
And hopefully this deep dive has given you, the listener, some things to think about. What do you think of Hatsun Agro's approach? What do you see for their future? And, what lessons can you apply to your own work, your own investments?
Always good to reflect on these things.
So on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into Hatsun Agro Product Ltd. Thanks for joining us.